Recording in progress.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. His Excellency Dr. Vasyl Hamianin, Ambassador Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary of Ukraine to the Republic of Indonesia. Professor Fatul Wahid ST.MC, PSD, Rector of Universitas Islam Indonesia, Vice Rectors of Universitas Islam Indonesia, Deans of Faculties of Universitas Islam Indonesia, college, students, and participants. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin, assalatu wassalamu ala asrofil anbiya'i wal mursalin, Sayyidina wa maulana Muhammadin, wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in, amma ba'd. In the name of Allah, the merciful, the beneficent, praise to the Lord of the world. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us from the pandemic and climate crisis. We are also giving our prayers to Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, his family, and all of his companions. May his intercession will be granted to us on the day of judgment. I am Masitah Nurrahma, and it is my pleasure to serve as the session chair for this important event. On behalf of Universitas Islam Indonesia, I want to extend a very warm welcome to all of you to the Ambassadorial Lecture, The Ukrainian Question in Global Politics. This event will be held in English. The audience who attend the Zoom meeting might use the live transcription feature on the downside of the screen. This event is also aired on our YouTube channel, Department of International Relations UII. Before we start, I will read our agenda for today. First, the opening. Second, Al-Quran recitation. Third, listening to national anthem of Indonesia and Ukraine, then hymn of Universitas Islam Indonesia. Fourth, opening speech by Rector of Universitas Islam Indonesia. Fifth, token of appreciation. Sixth, the main session of the event, the Ambassadorial Lecture. Seventh, question and answer session, and it will be closed by closing and announcement. Ladies and gentlemen, let's start this event by reciting Basmalah together. Continuing to the next agenda, the Al-Quran recitation will be delivered by a student of Universitas Islam Indonesia, Mr. Muhammad Shauki Fadlullah. Mr. Muhammad Shauki Fadlullah, the time is yours.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. واعتصموا بحبل الله جميعا ولا تفرقوا. واذكروا نعمة الله عليكم إذ كنتم أعداء فألف بين قلوبكم فأصبحتم بنعمته إخوانا. وكنتم على شفا حفرة من النار فأنقذكم منها. كذلك يبين الله لكم آياته لعلكم تهتدون. ولتكن منكم أمة يدعون إلى الخير ويأمرون بالمعروف وينهون عن المنكر وأولئك هم المفلحون وأولئك هم المفلحون صدق الله العظيم. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Mr. Shauki, for the beautiful and meaningful recitation. Ladies and gentlemen, our next agenda is National Anthem of Indonesia, followed by National Anthem of Ukraine, and the Hymn of Universitas Islam Indonesia. To all of the audience, please kindly stand up from your seats.
Усміхнеться доля, згинуть наші вороженьки, як роса на сонці, запануємо і ми, браття, у своїй сторонці. Душу й тіло ми положим за нашу свободу і покажем, що ми браття козацького роду. Душу й тіло ми положим за нашу свободу і покажем, що ми браття козацького
Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. Next, I would like to invite Professor Vasyl Wahid, ST, MSc, PhD, to give the opening speech. Professor Vasyl Wahid, the floor is yours.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. His Excellency Dr. Vasyl Hamianin, the Ambassador of Ukraine to Indonesia, my colleague, Vice Rectors, and Deans of Faculties of Universitas Islam Indonesia, students, and participants. On behalf of Universitas Islam Indonesia, I would like to extend our warm regard to all of the audience today in the Ambassadorial lecture, Ukrainian Question in Global Politics. Universitas Islam Indonesia has collaborated with numerous embassies, such as the Embassy of Palestine, Embassy of United States, and Embassy of Australia. It is such an honor to have a collaboration with the Embassy of Ukraine. Indonesia has maintained a good relationship with Ukraine since 1992. As a strategic partner, the cooperation of Indonesia-Ukraine is accelerated in the economic sector. But the current situation in Ukraine is a phenomenon of humanitarian crisis which should not have happened. The casualties approximately reach the number of more than 5,000 killed and 6,500 injured. However, the war is still going on, although it has almost reached 5 months of attack. President Joko Widodo's visit to Ukraine is a sign of Indonesia's commitment to maintain world peace. It means that Indonesia is pursuing an effort to seek the projection on the end of the conflict. The world should condemn any action which threatens humanity. Just like Indonesia, Universitas Islam Indonesia also commit to support in maintaining world peace. By holding this event, we would like to send you our sympathy and do our best effort to facilitate the public discussion about Ukraine's current situation. We hope this event could help the public to open up to another insight of Ukraine and encourage them to catch the best perspective to see the conflict between Ukraine and Russia. Ladies and gentlemen, we hope that you will have a meaningful and insightful discussion in this event. We are looking forward to another collaboration with the Embassy of Ukraine and participation from the audience. Thank you very much. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you for the insightful speech, Professor Vasyl Wahid. Next is token of appreciation. I would like to invite His Excellency Dr. Vasyl Hamianin and Dr. Phil Kurotul Uyun, SC, MC, to the stage. The first is token of appreciation, which will be presented by His Excellency Dr. Vasyl Hamianin. No.
Should I say something or no?
Yes, it's okay.
Selamat pagi, saudara-saudari, selamat pagi. Saya sangat dihormati hari ini di sini. Okay, I'll speak English because no, unfortunately I cannot be so fluent in bahasa. But first of all, yes, I would like to present some things, maybe some books, some meaningful things to leave the memory about Ukraine in your extraordinarily great university. Okay. So we start from this. So these are, well, maybe I try to explain one by one. The first book is written in 2020, and it's called "We Will Give Our Souls and Bodies for Our Freedom." Very similar to what you sing in your anthem, like Bangulah Jiwanya and Bangulah Badannya untuk Indonesia Raya. Same is in our anthem, same words. We will give up our souls and our bodies for our freedom. So this is the book about the war, Ukraine in the struggle against the armed aggression since 2014. That's one.
Thank you.
Another one. Another one is a special for your university because it's called war.ru. It's the research by one of our journalists, businessman, and historian, and who has been directly involved into the war since 2014. And he wrote a book which will include huge amount of materials. So you have all these QR code scans. So it's not just inside this book that there are documents, photos, and all that. So it's a very could be a very good basis for any sort of research. If you ever, anyone from the university will try to make a research on that.
Thank you very much.
This one. Well, this is easier. There are a lot of talks about Ukraine is divided into west and east, in the south and north, and that's why it cannot be united. This is one of the proofs that, well, not proof, but documental things that Ukraine, west and east, is one country. And here is more about the general knowledge about Ukraine. Why is it different? Why is it still applies the principle of Bineka Tunggal Ika in Ukraine? We are very different, but we are very united. So this, it's about Ukraine, about everything. It's all sorts of things. It's the culture and it's architecture, history, culture, food, traditions, and everything. So might be interesting for the researcher and for anyone. Well, this is about like advantage of Ukraine. Very simple. This is someone who don't have time but have a willingness to understand about Ukraine. It's basics in figures and in pictures. It's like key indicators, graphics, creative industries, hospitality, technologies, engineering, etc., agriculture, energy resources, etc. So it's for the busiest people, actually. And this is something that a very special edition about Legacy Ukraine. It's worldwide known people who actually were Ukrainians, and then because of this or that reason, for revolution, the war, or repressions, they moved to other countries, but became famous and still always remembered the roots. It's always remembered the roots, including famous helicopter constructor Sikorsky, including Citroën, including many people. So the inventor first, Davidoff, famous cigarette and brand producer, etc. So this is something to understand that, like Indonesians, Ukrainians are everywhere, basically. So you can find them, the roots, in any case. And not yet. And then there is just a minute. Then now something. When we received the invitation, my daughter said she would prepare something special for the university. I apologize if it's perceived in different way, but she described it as she saw it in her soul. So this is the Indonesian mother and Indonesian child. What the colors? What she explained me briefly, that the color means that in danger, mother will protect the children. In danger, country will protect the citizens. So basically, it's like this. Very disturbing colors, but you can see that I mean, that's what I feel. The mother is like trying to protect the kid who is maybe in danger. So. My daughter, it's my daughter. Yeah, she's not a painter. She started to paint when she escaped from the war and came to Indonesia 3 months ago. So she started to paint something, and yeah, that's it.
Thank you very much, His Excellency. And then the next is token of appreciation from UII, which will be presented by Dr. Phil Krotuyun, SCMC. Oh, not yet. I'm so sorry.
Now, this maybe I need help of someone. Can you please come to help me? Because this is something we created before even I came to Indonesia last year with my friends. We decided to establish the series of posters and calendars like Heroic Indonesia in Faces. So we did some work, and these are some results I show you. This is Khairil Anwar. I think everybody here knows him. And it's his poem, very famous poem, Karwang Bekasi, translated into Ukrainian, and here is the original text. Karwang Bekasi is the poem that impressed a lot of Ukrainian defenders. When we translate and read it to the people, they were crying. The soldiers who fight every day, they were crying because it's so close to their hearts. So, and another Khairil Anwar poem. And this is the Khairil Anwar poem Aku. I think it's also well known to everyone here. And what's important is that we created this because this year we planned to celebrate the 30th anniversary of hubungan diplomatic between Indonesia and Ukraine. But unfortunately, we just mark it, but didn't celebrate because of the war. Yeah, Khairil Anwar with his poems, yes. It's why I chosen Khairil Anwar, because Khairil Anwar was a young man who made a huge contribution for the independence of Indonesia, for the freedom of Indonesia, for the spirit of Indonesia. And well, as far as I can see, the majority attendance today are young people. So this is something I was inspired by. This is something you might be inspired by.
Thank you.
And right, because I think it might be meaningful for here. It is the famous poem by Hamza Fansuri. I think this for Islam in the whole region of including Indonesia and Malaysia, his heritage is very important. So it's also, that's what we created in Ukraine and printed and bring here to celebrate it. Hamza Fansuri. And the last one, maybe not directly related to your university and our topic, but definitely related to Jawa and Jogja. This is the Raden Gabei Rongowarsito Bagus Buram, his poem Serat Kalatido. And also it's in Bahasa Jawa, Bahasa Indonesia, and translated into Ukrainian. And here is the seventh, yes, the famous seventh part of it, Serat Kalatido, seventh letter in Charakan. So why Rongoversito? Because when we started to explore him, to discover what he was writing about, then we decided to translate at least this poem. He's a prophet. In my view, I just see what happens. This poem was written more than 100 years ago, more than 200, nearly 150 years ago, a long time ago. But I read it as if it happens now. This is an era of madness, and we have to beware, we have to be careful, like Bagus Burham used to say, we have to be careful and wait. We have to be alarmed. So this is a little gift to your university. Thank you.
Thank you, His Excellency. Now we are going to the token of appreciation from Universitas Islam Indonesia, which will be presented by Dr. Vasyl Krotul Uyun, SCMC.
Okay. We will give you a book, several books. The writers, the lecturers from our faculty. This is this book. The writer of this book are Pak Fuad Nasori, Haris Enggar Wijaya, Subhan Afifi, Bu Intan Pradita, Holi Rafika Dona, Ali Muhammad As-Siddiqui, and Willy Azhadi. Yes. This is Ilmu Sosial and Humaniora, is Science of Social and Humaniora in Islamic perspective. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you know, yeah. Ulama, okay. Yeah. This book, written by international relation programs, study program. By Hasbi Aswar. This is lecturer from the international lecturer of relationship. Yeah. Okay. Ulama and legitimacy of politics. Yeah. Okay. This book written by all lecturers from international program from our faculty. Yeah. Okay. This is gift from international program for you. Yeah, I hope you. Yeah. Yeah. You're welcome.
Thank you very much, His Excellency and Dr. Uyun. His Excellency, we kindly request for you to please remain on the stage, and Dr. Uyun, please be seated. Thank you very much. Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, now the most awaited session for today, the Ambassadorial Lecture, the Ukrainian Question in Global Politics. Before we start the Ambassadorial Lecture, allow me to give a brief introduction of His Excellency Dr. Vasyl Hamianin. His Excellency joined the diplomatic service in Ukraine in 2002. In 2002 to 2010, he occupied various diplomatic positions in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine, Embassy of Ukraine in China, Secretariat of the Verkhovna Rada, Parliament of Ukraine. In 2011 and 2015, he served in the Embassy of Ukraine in China as Minister, Consular, and Chargé d'Affaires. In 2020 to 2021, he served as Deputy Director of the 4th Territorial Department, Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine. On July 30, 2021, he has appointed as Ambassador Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary of Ukraine to the Republic of Indonesia and presented the letter of credence to His Excellency Joko Widodo, President of the Republic of Indonesia, on October 25, 2021. Ladies and gentlemen, moving on to the Ambassadorial Lecture, Ukrainian Question in Global Politics. We know that the conflict in Ukraine has lasted almost 5 months. The casualties reached more than 10,000. The world began to raise questions about when this humanitarian crisis ends and why it happened. There are perspectives that argue that the conflict was caused by the fear of expansion of NATO to Ukraine. Some also believe that it is not the matter of the externalities, but the historical factors related to Ukraine and Russia. Many arguments are proposed as to why this war is still here. In response to the described situation above, today we are honored by the presence of His Excellency Dr. Vasyl Hamianin, Ambassador of Ukraine to Indonesia, who will provide insights into what is actually happening in Ukraine and the other question about Ukraine in global politics. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome His Excellency Dr. Vasyl Hamianin. His Excellency, the time is yours.
Can you hear me? Can I speak like this? Yeah. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Yang terhormat ketua-ketua, yang terhormat profesor-profesor, yang terhormat students, mahasiswa, saudara-saudari yang saya hormati, selamat pagi, still pagi, okay. If you allow me, I will speak English because, well, it will be very complicated for me to struggle through Bahasa, which I am not speaking well, unfortunately. I'm sorry about that, but I will. Next time, maybe I'll be able to deliver some speech in Bahasa. So I'm really grateful to the leadership of the university who arranged my visit here. I'm really honored. And it's really great honor for me to be here because the oldest university in maybe in Indonesia, right? And at least the university which is older than the state itself, it gives you great responsibility and great honor to face you, to talk to you. But I would love to start from a different issue. You just mentioned that the war lasts for 5 months, nearly 5 months. In fact, what we call it is the 5th month of 8 years war that lasted for centuries. In fact, this war between Ukraine and Russia has been lasting for centuries. And the a hot stage started 8 years ago, exactly in 2014, and like the 8th annual diplomatic course of international relations. So it started exactly the same year. Unfortunately, that's a bad memory for all of us. And today I have especially to point out one event, very unfortunate, very tragic event that happened 8 years ago yesterday, 17th of July. It is the catastrophe happened to the Malaysian Airlines flight MH17. 8 years ago, 17th of July, it was shot by Russian aggressors near the border between Ukraine and Russia, which is that time was occupied by Russian terrorists. In this flight, more than 200 people died, including 12 Indonesians, including one baby. Till now, we have the preliminary results of International Court of Justice telling who was directly responsible and indirectly responsible for this tragedy. Till now, in its best traditions, Russian Federation didn't apologize to anyone, to any country in the world whose citizens were killed in this. It's not an accident, it's a terrorist act, and they did not apologize till now. So I propose to give 15 seconds of our time, keep silent to commemorate the victims of MH17 now. Thank you very much. When I was planning this lecture, I was thinking very carefully how to start, what to start from, and what would be the plan. Well, as you might well know, Ukraine and Russia, unfortunately, are neighbors, and we have been having this neighbor for many centuries. And all those centuries were the history of our fight, of Ukrainian fight for independence against a very strong enemy, a very strong neighbor. And if we talk about this, we can discuss this issue for days and days and days. So 1 hour would not be enough to depicture all what happened and all the background. That's why I decided first to give the very general background, very general basic facts, basic points in the history that will maybe lead you to the understanding what was the roots of this Russian aggression. In this world, I think Ukrainians were the first to understand the reality that the world faces now. Because I repeat, we've been coexisting for a long, long time. And maybe because we stand for centuries in the same states, in the same countries, like Russian Empire and last but one. The last one was the Soviet Union, Union of Soviet Socialist Republic. And I was growing up in this country, and I think I have the right to say that I do understand the psychology of my people and of the people who live around me, around us, around my country. Now, I would start from, yes, and of course, after I finish, I think there would be hundreds of questions. I don't know, but I always have a lot of questions asked. Please do not hesitate, because there are things that you may, as people of different cultures, people of different backgrounds, you may think about something worth asking, which I would not ever think about. So you'll be very welcome to ask any questions. I repeat, any questions, even personal if you want, but maybe as you may know, I have a very complicated background myself. So I'm not just like a career diplomat, because I had an experience in, first of all, I lived in at least two countries, like Soviet Union and then Ukraine, and then as a citizen. Then I have a very diverse background in study. I was like finance, it was linguistics, it was history. Then I had a background in business, in international business. And as a state servant, I worked for the Minister of Foreign Affairs, for the Parliament, for the presidential office, and I was self-employed for a long time. And you know, this maybe means nothing, but you have a good possibility, a good opportunity to look at everything from outside sometimes. And right. So if you allow me, I'll start from the very important book. When I am asked, what book would you recommend to read in terms of understanding what is going on in this world today? I can point out many, like, as I mentioned yesterday, Diplomacy by Henry Kissinger. But today I would like to mention one book which I think is compulsory to read for all the students of faculties of international relations and international law, definitely, in fact. It's The Grand Chessboard by Zbigniew Brzezinski. You know him well. He was advisor to the President of the United States and etc. For security issues. And he was the real, what we called a hawk, someone who had Polish roots, Slavic roots actually, which is very close to Ukraine, and who was really understood the essence of the Soviet Union, and he really understood the essence of Russian Federation and all this geopolitical cluster, I would say, around the around Russian Federation, Russian Empire. Now, I just read you only 2 or 3 pieces from his book, which was published in 1997, but of course was read long before this. Ukraine, a new and important space on the Eurasian chessboard, is a geopolitical pivot because its very existence as an independent country helps to transform Russia. Without Ukraine, Russia ceases to be a Eurasian empire. Russia without Ukraine can still strive for imperial status, but it would then become a predominantly Asian imperial state, more likely to be drawn into debilitating conflicts with aroused Central Asians, who would then be resentful of the loss of their recent independence and would be supported by the fellow Islamic states to the south. China would also be likely to oppose any restoration of Russian domination over Central Asia, given its increasing interest in the newly independent states there. However, if Moscow regains control over Ukraine, with its 52 million people and major resources, as well as its access to the Black Sea, Russia automatically again regains the wherewithal to become a powerful imperial state, spanning Europe and Asia. Ukraine's loss of independence would have immediate consequences for Central Europe, transforming Poland into the geopolitical pivot on the eastern frontier of a united Europe. Well, I can tell more and more about this, but this, when people ask me, what is the reason that Russia attacked Ukraine like 8 years ago and now 5 months ago, there are many reasons, but the basic ideological point is restoration of Russian Empire. Whatever you call it, Soviet Union, Commonwealth of Independent States, Eurasian Community, whatever it is called, the essence still remains the same. It is Russian Empire with an emperor on the top. Historically, I have only one request to all of you. please try to perceive me not as Ukrainian ambassador or Ukrainian at all. Try to perceive me as historian, because when I speak out some things which feel like unbelievable, they say, oh, because he's Ukrainian, that's why he accuses Russia of all these sins. No. I would like to talk to you from the historic point of view, and this is something confirmed by centuries, confirmed by the research and all that. So first, let's see what happened, what has been happening with Russian history and Ukrainian history. Now, the history of Russia, the history of Russian Federation is a history of invasions, history of extending the lands while killing and oppressing the nations, other nations. It's the history of lies and the history of stealing names and notions. Even the name Russia was first used in 18th century. All of a sudden they changed the Moscow kingdom into Russian Empire. Why? As any tree needs roots, any nation needs roots. So if you don't have roots, you are not having parents, you're not having grandparents, you have no future, and you have no basis to claim anything. So there was a pathetic go by Russian historians and political leaders of those times. So they've stolen our name. The name of Rus, which belonged to Ukraine since 5th century, so 1,500 years ago. The history of Russia was the history of colonialism. From the small state, supported then by the Mongolian Empire, well, we can call it Chinese Empire Yuan, but we'd rather call it Mongolian Empire. It's Golden Horde. Supported by it, it started expansion and expanded to vast territories, especially in Asia, but also in Europe. The idea of Russian Tsars, especially like a vivid example of those expansionists and colonialist spirit, was demonstrated by so-called John the Terrible, the Tsar that was like very specific in Russian history. His task was to impose the power of Tsar as absolute at all the territories around him. At that time, Ukraine remained like pretty democratic. Well, it was like very close to the so-called Greek democracy, but without slavery. As we remember, the ancient Greek democracy was based basically on the slavery. But all that happened in Ukraine with the Slav ethnic groups living there were based on democratic rule, like choosing the kings, choosing the princes, and knocking them down if not satisfied. So, speaking in advance a bit, Ukraine has never been under the power of kings or emperors. It was, on some periods, torn between some empires, but finally, we have always been feeling like a nation, but not like a part of empire, not like a part of something, a unity under the king, emperor, or any other sacred figures. It was always a democratic anarchy that ruled Ukraine all the times. That was our benefit, that was our pride, but that was our tragedy as well, because exactly the lack of the powerful central power did not allow Ukrainians to unite finally to oppose the strong enemies through the history. Now, on the contrary, in Russian Federation, when you look at the history, they cannot live without the Tsar, they cannot live without the emperor till now. But it's not just like symbolic emperor, symbolic like king, like in many European countries. It should be a real king. And as the recent 8 years and recent 5 months prove, Russian people are ready to sacrifice everything, their well-being, their prosperity, the lives of their children, everything, for the sake of ambitions of the king. This was the main difference, and when people, again, some people and experts even state that you were like the same country for a long time. You were brothers, you were sisters, and you were living in the same realm, and you were like very close ideologically, psychologically, linguistically, and finally I said this example. So no, not linguistically, no psychologically, no historically, it's just geographically. Geographical notion would make us very much different. So the struggle of Ukraine against Russian colonialism basically lasted for over 300 years, over 3 centuries, and I would not go back to the history, it's too long, but there were numerous revolutions and revolts against the Russian rule, against the other imperial rules over Ukraine. And at that time, if we talk about this, at that time Ukraine played a very specific, again, a very specific role in European geopolitics, because it was the, it has the unique geographical position. It has unique geographical position in terms of trade, in terms of controlling the routes from north to south, from south to north, and from east to west, and vice versa. Till now, it remains like a very important transportation hub, even now, when we have this post-colonial period of our history. That's why the one who controlled Ukraine at that time controlled actually all the trade routes between Europe, Asia, and part of Africa. So there was, I think, might be the main idea why Ukraine has always been a battlefield between the nomads, between the armies of from north, from Vikings to Greeks to Turks to Russians to Polish, etc., etc., etc. So it has always been a battlefield. But the first real attempt to establish independence happened. Ukrainian people made in a little bit more than 100 years ago, before the establishment of the Soviet Union. It was like 1917, 1918, 19, the beginning of 20th century, when the Russian Bolshevik Revolution took place. At that time, there were very strong attempt by Ukrainians to unite and oppose, to fight the Bolsheviks from one side and the Imperial Army of Russian Federation from the other side. Unfortunately, at that time we failed to unite again, and the understanding was that Western Europe understood that Ukraine will be a battlefield, and Ukraine will become either the part of the Bolshevik Russia or the buffer zone between the civilized Europe and uncivilized Russia. So there were fights, there were massive terror performed by then Bolshevik troops coming from Russia on Ukrainian territory, and then Ukraine failed. In a couple of years, the remains of the fighters for freedom still fought till 20, maybe 28, 29, and even later. But then they were substantially damaged or even destroyed by Stalin's repressions especially in 1932-33, when the Great Famine, what we called it, was arranged by Stalin's and Bolshevik government, and as a result, up to 6 million people of Ukrainians died of starvation. And those were the people who refused to collaborate with the Soviet regime, just wanted to stay like more or less independent in the farmers' activities. For that, they were killed. Next attempt was taken during the Second World War, 1939-1945. At that time, as you know, the organization of Ukrainian nationalists, basically is the first, not the first, but for those periods was the first very strong and centralized organization established with the purpose to make Ukraine independent. And again, the Germany, Nazi Germany, and the Soviet Union government viewed Ukraine as the crucial battlefield between the two beasts, I would say, right? Because no one was better than the other. The Soviet Union and the Nazi Germany were worth each other, so it just happened that they were supported by the West and then won this war. But the Ukrainian army was fighting, Liberation Army was fighting in two fronts, against the Nazi and against the Bolsheviks. And then again failed. In this period, I would not use the word important event, but very tragic event again happened in Ukraine, in peninsula of Crimea, when in 1944 the Muslim population of Crimea, which were Crimean Tatars, were forcefully deported from Crimea. 100% of people were just removed from the lands to other places like Central Asia, like Siberia and others. Within few days, just trains. And since 1944, they didn't have a chance to go back home. And only in 1991, after Ukrainian independence, they came back. That's a bit of the history of Ukrainian Muslim population. Now, the fight for Ukraine from the perspectives of Russian Federation continued during the Soviet periods of time, and all the force, all the mightiness of Soviet government was directed into destroying the Ukrainian identity, destroying language, destroying the cultural relations, any roots which we had, and trying to create this mythology about the one nation, Russian, Belarusian, and Ukrainian, as one single and indivisible. Fortunately, as I mentioned, since Ukrainian identity was based not on the imperial principles, but on the nation, on the language, on our embroidery, on our batik, on our souls, on our songs and language, this attempt failed, and we still, we remained very identical Ukrainians. By the way, Belarus people, I would not say totally failed, but they've nearly lost the language as the language of communication, like some other nations in the world in previous centuries. In Belarus, very small percentage of people still communicate in Belarus language as the mother language, right? They can speak, but they don't use it normally. That's what the result. But yeah, in Ukraine they failed. Now we come to the very important point when the Soviet Union. I would not talk about the reasons why Soviet Union collapsed. I think it's clear. If you are interested in this, may ask this question. But we come to the very important point of the 1991, when Soviet Union ceased to exist. It just collapsed, disintegrated, and on its place, 15 independent states emerged. And I want to, I didn't say it in the beginning, but I would like to say it now, right? What is the most important when you analyze the geopolitics, when you try to understand what's happening for you? Obviously, it's not TikTok and Twitter sources, right? For students, for scholars, for all people who can think, it's very important not to be lazy. Go deeper. Don't look at the surface. You have to go deeper. If one step down is not enough, dig more, dig deeper. Because only if you dig, or you use your time, right? You use your brains, only then you can discover the truth. This is what I found out when I read and I listen to the lectures of well-known provocator, Mr. Mearsheimer, who is widely referred to as the great specialist on Soviet problem, on Russian-Ukrainian conflict, etc. It is very important to understand what are the real prerequisites and what are the real conditions and real events that led to something, some phenomena, and then became the result of some other phenomena. Now, follow me closely. It is very important to understand what we're talking about today, right? Geopolitical place of Ukraine, and in general, the European geopolitics. After the Second World War, it was decided by the Western countries to create the alliance, which would defend them in case of any other attempt of any other aggressive state to attack. Yes? So NATO appeared in this world, right? And it was defensive alliance. Absolutely defensive. Against whom? The answer is very obvious. As I mentioned, when two beasts fought and the one beast was defeated and the second beast became the winner, it did not remove the awareness of the West and countries of Western democracies that the danger is still there. Because Soviet Union was very aggressive country, as like led by Russia. And Soviet Union was a danger, was a threat to all the civilized world at that time. If you see the history of the Soviet Union, the history of attacks, the history of like military coup d'etat in many countries in the world, like firing the war in any possible corner of the world. Well, one of the obvious examples is Afghanistan, right? Which started before the Moscow Olympiad. So we have the NATO and we have the opposite, the Soviet Union heading then Warsaw Pact, yes? So also like defensive or in fact offensive pact of socialist camp. Now, we are coming to the 1991, and all this period of what, 40 years, 40 plus years, we could see the great confrontation, and very fierce confrontation, and dangerous confrontation, in fact, between NATO and Soviet Union. We don't take into account the other countries who were also colonized by the Russian Federation, obviously, like Poland, like Czech Republic, all that. Now, from the point of view of Soviet Union, NATO was a threat. From the point of view of NATO, Soviet Union was a threat. Soviet Union was a dictatorship, was a terrorist country, was isolated country in all terms. Soviet people just cannot travel abroad. They cannot watch anything like broadcasted from abroad unless permitted specially, etc., etc. So it's absolute isolation. Look at North Korea, we were nearly the same. Right, and when in 1991, Soviet Union was destroyed, right, disintegrated, split into 15 countries. NATO has lost the threat, NATO has lost the opponent, has lost. It's not like one country, as a result of change of regime, from the communist became socialist or vice versa. No, it just collapsed into 15 countries. And what left of Russia, it was not the Soviet Union. Because the population, territories, mentality was all very much different. Now, what happened to Russia? It lost the threat. Also, the threat to Russia disappeared because Russia became sovereign, democratic state with a parliament, with elected president, with freedom to travel, with freedom to change. We couldn't even change the dollars in former Soviet Union freely. Everything became normal, everything became free, everything became democratic in Russian Federation too, including Baltic countries, Ukraine, and all the same, Central Asian countries included. Now, in this period, NATO countries' attitude towards Russia and towards Ukraine, towards other countries, was very amicable, very friendly, and very cooperative. This scale of cooperation between NATO and Russian Federation before they attacked Ukraine in 2014 was just huge. We cannot compare with that. It was military exercises, joint military exercises. It were exchanges of experts. It was huge amount of exports of weapons from NATO countries to Russia. By the way, the last exports of weapons and related items from NATO countries to Russia lasted till the end of last year, just before the full-scale invasion. And this is from some countries that Russia claims to be a threat and a concern. Now, second one. So we lost this very basic postulate. We destroyed it, this very basic postulate that all the claims by experts like Mr. Mearsheimer were based. Because with the collapse of the Soviet Union, no concerns or worries existed from Russia towards the NATO. It was NATO countries. It were NATO countries. It was the United States, the United Kingdom, and other countries that actually pressed upon Ukraine to give up the nuclear arsenal, which was the third in the world, the third largest in the world. So in 1994, just think about it. Because if you don't think, if you don't analyze, you will never understand why it is so important. Listen, NATO countries, which Russia is very concerned about, so enemies and all that, NATO countries pressed upon Ukraine, which was always very friendly and open towards NATO, right, to give up the nuclear weapons, like thousands of nuclear missiles, give it to Russia. Yeah? So who was threatening whom? And whose concern was then the NATO? If NATO made Russia obtain thousands of nuclear missiles. Where is the logic? I'm asking you. And then Ukraine gave Russia nuclear warheads and missiles and the aircrafts which now are bombarding Ukrainian cities with those missiles we gave them in 1994. And then if you think about the concerns, well, the main point is concern of Russian Federation towards NATO. Now, counter-arguments. Before Russia attacked Ukraine in 2014, NATO cooperation scale I mentioned already. Who was the main investor into Russian economy? United States and Europe, NATO countries. Who was the main importer of Russian gas, oil, other resources? United States, Europe, European Union, and the NATO, basically NATO countries. Who made Russian economy remain afloat and survive the system? By investing, by providing technologies, by opening offices and opening plants and opening factories in Russian Federation. United States, European Union, NATO countries. Who was the main military partner? NATO. Putin even was the member of G8. It's not because Russia was great and influential economy, but because that was a desperate attempt of world community to save his face, finally. If this dictator feels happy, feels calm, feels great, like sitting in row with world leaders, then he will be like not aggressive. They miscalculated it. So I think it's if you don't trust me or something, you can read the basic thing that basic documents that will prove my words about the cooperation, about the NATO, about Russian concerns. And don't forget about the very important factor. Very important factor. From the TV, the propaganda and the politicians, if you listen to them now, or even maybe like a couple of years ago, they will say that what? It is hatred from the West. We hate the West. West is our enemy. Western principles and Western values are not acceptable for Russian Federation, for Russian people. Blah, 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 blah. At the same time, ask anyone in Russian Federation, where do the Russian leaders send their kids to study? Europe or European Union or the United States, maybe Canada. Where do they prefer to keep the savings, money? United States and European Union. Where do they prefer to spend the holidays? United States, European Union, and all the other countries. So, like a classic propagandist state, like a classic terrorist state, with the system of propaganda that has been developing for more than 100 years, they very hypocritically feed the people who cannot go anywhere because they are just poor and miserable. They just feed them with the stories about the bad Western countries, bad NATO and all that, to create the enemy and to distract attention from the internal problems. And themselves, welcome to the club. So this is, just think about this. If you keep money in this country, if you send children to this country, if you spend all your possible time in this country, how could you call this country an enemy? By the way, I mean, all the cars, all the luxury things, all the iPhone and all the stuff that Russians use, made in the West, the hostile Western countries, 99%. Now, just summarize it. This point. One of the main mistakes of the people when they talk about the reasons of basic reasons of the conflict between the civilized world and Russia is the confusing Russian Federation and the Soviet Union, which are very much different things. Absolutely, like totally different. It's like, you know, now Russia is turning slowly into the Soviet Union, yes, but the West and the world community paid a lot of efforts to prevent this from happening. We talked about this. Now, about the peaceful stance of Russian Federation. Since we will not go earlier, but since the independence in 1991, Russia started and hold very bloody wars in Transnistria, Moldova, Georgia twice, Chechnya twice. In Chechnya, by the way, second Chechnya war led to the casualties among the civilian Muslim population of Chechnya. General amount up to 300,000 people. So that's about friendly Russia, like Russian Federation as a friendly Muslim state. 300,000 civilian Muslim people were killed in Chechnya during the Putin's rule. Think about this. Then Georgia, 2008. And very symbolic that all the last attacks, Georgia, Ukraine, happened in the years where the Olympic Games took place. The Olympic Games, symbol of peace, 2008, the very same day of the Olympic openings, Georgia was attacked. 2014, Olympic Games, Ukraine was attacked. 2022, Ukraine was attacked. And I'm not mentioning about Syria. And that's, I don't know if I read it somewhere or not, but that was my understanding when the war started, 24th of February in Ukraine. I understood that all these years, Russian regime has been testing the world, has been testing Europe, has been testing NATO. What if I do this? How would they react? Nothing, okay. Let me do this. Still nothing. Good. I go back to Georgia. Hit 20% of territory of Georgia occupied. Still nothing. Great. Ukraine. Donbass and Crimea. Occupied, and Crimea declared the part of Russian Federation. Still nothing. And then why are you surprised that Russia finally attacked Ukraine from all sides, from everywhere, in such a huge amount of weapons and ammunition? Why? It is a surprise for the world. It was logical, and if the world did not react at all, next would be anyone. European Union, Baltic states, Poland, Kazakhstan, anything. So what happens in Ukraine now? As it used to be many times in history, as, by the way, it's interesting when I think what it was still Srivijaya or already Mataram, when Mongolians attacked the Java, the Javanese army kicked off Mongolians from Java. So the only army in the world that defeated Mongolian invasion was Javanese army, Indonesian basically. And that's at the same time Ukraine failed to defeat Mongolians in that part, but it exhausted them and stopped. That's why the invasion stopped in Ukrainian territory, didn't go any further to Europe. Now, what happened in this situation in 2022? Actually, I see it as the last in history attack of colonialism to democracy and freedom. Russia effectively remains the last colonial state, which consists of, if you look at the ethnic composition of Russian Federation, we'll see that so-called Russians might be like, I don't know, 40%, 20%, I don't know what. But all there are too many like autonomous republics. We have Chechnya, we have Dagestan, we have Bashkortostan, Tatarstan, Yakutia, we have Buryat Republic, blah, blah, blah. So it's too many. And it's history, okay? It was colonized. These territories were colonized by Russian army many years ago. Colonized, bribed, then all that. And the last colonial attack on Ukraine happened just 5 months ago. And obviously, as Brzezinski wrote a lot in his book, please read it, please read it. It's many interesting things in this book. Not just it's a lot about Southeast Asia, about East Asia, about Africa, Latin America, etc. But this is the last fight, fight for Ukraine, not for the for protection of principles, not for the to prevent any danger or any threat. No, it is a fight for Ukraine in order to restore the empire, the Soviet Union, whatever you call it, the big colonial state of Russia. And my forecast, this is the final agony of colonialism in the world. And Russian Federation will be defeated. Again, not because I'm the representative of Ukraine, but because this is history, and history never lies to you. You want to know what happens, you don't want to be Ratu Joyo Boyo to become a prophet. You need to be a historian to look back to history. And then you can be a prophet, real prophet. You will understand what happened. But however, unfortunately, not many people believe in this, because not many people believe in prophecies. Well, we don't have much time to from idea, but present situation. Well, you may ask me about the present situation, what's happening in Ukraine at present. But in present, well, I would say the most important, maybe after this I ask questions. The most important thing when I ask what is the scale of the war, I say now what happens in Ukraine is not just please never call it conflict, because it's not a conflict. If it is conflict, it's a conflict between, again, colonialism and democracy. And what happens now effectively is the Third World War. This Third World War in nature is different from the Second World War. It has happened many years ago, because now we live in 21st century, and sometimes you don't need to use your weapons even to destroy the country. Just use your economic leverage, you use your financial instruments, etc., to destroy any small country in the world. It's easy. So now, taking into account the number of countries involved into this, we call it patriotic war of Ukraine, into this war, is huge. Only the number of anti-war coalition members is 50 plus. And if you think about how many countries are influenced by this war, you will be very much surprised. It's nearly the whole world. Because of the financial crisis, because of the food crisis, because of the energy crisis, logistic crisis, and what the main crisis is, the crisis of trust and the crisis of diplomacy. We are facing the worst crisis of diplomacy and political trust in last maybe 80 years.
Excuse me, His Excellency, your time is 5 minutes left.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Let me hold on. Let me maybe. Yeah. Finally, maybe just very finally. In this situation, in this war, in this confrontation between evil and good, it's important to understand that no one can remain neutral. In this situation, all the world, every country, every leader should decide for himself whether he is defending the colonialism and supporting the war against Ukraine, or you are defending the principles of democracy, freedom, independence, and what is right, and don't remain silent or neutral. Well, maybe I'll answer the questions after this. Maybe you'll be interested in what I think about that. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Hatur nuwun. Matur nuwun and hatur nuwun. Yeah, sorry.
Sami-sami, His Excellency. His Excellency, I believe that you have some videos to share with us. Would you mind to share it with us?
Yes, please. Yeah, you see, nobody reminded me, I forgot. There are 3 videos I took with me. It's like every video is like for 2 minutes or something. 2 videos are from Muslim leaders of Ukraine, 2 mufti. One is mufti of Crimea, one is mufti of Ukraine. As you might know, our former mufti Said Ismailov, who visited Indonesia, I think twice, resigned because he went as volunteer to the war in the east, and now he is fighting on the front line, defending our land. Well, not exactly fighting. He is now he's a driver in paramedic car, who is every day on the most dangerous points of Ukrainian front of resistance against Russians, and he has saved now so many lives. I'm very proud to have this friend, and now the acting mufti of Ukraine is Murad Suleimanov, and the mufti of Crimean Tatar people, Aider Rustemov. So they prepared brief messages for you, for Indonesian brothers and sisters. Who can make it?
Ассаламу алейкум, шановні брати та сестри, шановний братерський народи Індонезії. Від імені мусульман України маю честь вітати вас і вашу велику країну, особливо зараз, у перші дні місяця Дзульхіджа, напередодні свята Айд аль-Адха, хочу привітати вас з цим великим святом Айд аль-Адха і бажаю, щоб ваші молитви та добрі справи були прийняті Всевишнім Аллахом. Протягом останніх місяців увага світу прикута до нашої країни, де триває війна і гинуть мирні люди. Внаслідок російської агресії, на жаль, серйозно постраждала і наша мусульманська спільнота України. Десятки тисяч мусульман стали переселенцями всередині країни або виїхали за кордон. Багато мусульман втратили свої домівки через бойові дії, зруйновано 3 мечеті. Нам відомо про десятки загиблих мусульман, цивільних і військових, які стали на захист своєї країни від несправедливого нападу. Ми високо цінуємо візит президента Республіки Індонезія Джоко Відода до України та підтримку народу Індонезії у цей час війни за свободу і незалежність нашої держави. Ми знаємо, що народ Індонезії також проходив у своїй історії скрізь важке випробування боротьби за справедливість і незалежність своєї країни. І за це вам також довелося платити високу ціну, жертвувати життям людей і втратою майна. Але, врешті-решт, Всевишній дав перемогу тим, хто був на боці справедливості і боровся за свою свободу. Однак, незважаючи ні на що, ми намагаємося зберігати і продовжуємо наше релігійне життя. Проводимо колективні молитви, вчимо мусульман основам їх віри і правильному читанню Корану, розповідаємо людям про те, яким іслам є насправді. Адже все це головні цілі життя мусульманина. Наші мечеті відкриті у тих містах, де це можливо з огляду на вимоги безпеки. І ми продовжуємо звертатися з дуа до Всевишнього і просимо Його про мир і безпеку в Україні, а також просимо мусульман Індонезії не забувати нас у своїх дуа, нехай Всевишній буде вами задоволений.
Ассаламу алейкум ва рахматуллахі ва баракатуху. Мир вам та милість Аллаха та Його благословення. Дякуємо президенту Республіки Індонезія, пану Джоко Відодо, за підтримку нашої країни та візит до Києва в цей важкий час для України. Дякуємо за намір приєднатися до цього вже глобального протистояння добра злу, яке несе в собі Російська Федерація. Боротися зі злом та несправедливістю – один з основоположних принципів ісламу, який історично є однією з традиційних релігій для України. Релігію корінного народу України – кримських татар. Саме Крим став колискою для ісламу як державної релігії Кримського ханства та багатьох народів Європи. Саме з окупації Криму почалась ця війна Росії проти України в 2014 році. І зараз вона продовжується повномасштабним вторгненням та протистоянням на всій материковій частині України. І саме поверненням Криму вона завершиться, іншаллах. Індонезія, як і Україна, пройшла складний шлях боротьби за свою незалежність. І народ Індонезії, як ніхто інший, розуміє складність та цінність цієї боротьби за свободу. Ми сподіваємось на плідну співпрацю з мусульманським братським народом Індонезії у відбудові та відродженні ісламської культурної спадщини України після закінчення цієї дикої війни, як в Криму, так і в багатьох інших місцях України, в Одесі, Дніпрі, Миколаєві та інших містах, де історично існували мечеті, де є мусульманські громади. Віримо в нашу перемогу. Terima kasih banyak atas dukungannya.
Thank you very much, His Excellency, for the video and the lecture session. Once more. Thank you very much for the video. The session was thoughtful, His Excellency. There are some important points about the lecture. So actually the history of Ukraine and Russia relations is very long, and it is becoming conflictual actually. And the Russia actually have a joint military cooperation with the Ukraine before the Crimean, and it is becoming conflictual again when the Crimea crisis happened. And the Ukraine and the Russia has lost basic posture of political relations since then. And from the lecture, the ambassador stated also that Ukraine, as the democratic state, will sacrifice everything for their sovereignty. And it is also a message from the ambassador for every audience in this room and also in the Zoom meeting or in the YouTube channel of Department of International Relations, UII, that actually we have to go deeper, dig deeper to see the fact what is actually happening in this global world, in the global politics, so that we can see or we can catch the right perspective to get the point of view of the situation of or the phenomenon that currently happening. So, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to open the question and answer session. Ladies and gentlemen, if you wish to ask a question, please raise your hand. Okay, the one with the blue shirt, and then the one with brown shirt, and then in the back, the one with black shirt. 3 questions first. Is it enough? You can go to the center, to the microphone, please. Please mention your name and the institution.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello, my name is Amiruddin, an international relations student, 6th semester. First of all, I'd love to thank the Department of International Relations for organizing this wonderful event and giving me time to deliver my questions. Also, I'd like to say thank you to the Ambassador of Ukraine, His Excellency, Dr. Vasyl Hamianin, who has delivered extraordinary lecture material today. Last month, Indonesian President Joko Widodo made diplomatic visits to the conflict countries Russia and Ukraine. Behind his visit, President Joko Widodo brought several political missions, including promoting and affirming Indonesia's position in responding to the war between Russia and Ukraine as a non-aligned country, and then preventing a world food crisis. Furthermore, to promoting Indonesia's standing position and the principle of its free and active foreign policy. And the main thing is to carry out a peace mission and to become a bridge of communication between Russia and Ukraine. Especially, Indonesia is the host of the G20 or Group of 20 Multilateral Cooperation Forum. But the thing is, does Indonesia and this agenda capable of being a catalyst for the realization of peace between these two countries? Considering that this conflict is already very complex, and Indonesia itself does not yet have the capacity in terms of power. What do you have in mind about this issue? Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much for the question. Now we are going to the next question.
Okay. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Muhammad Hilmi Adani, ID 1923101. Here I want to ask first of all, thank you for High Excellencies, Dr. Vasyl Hamianin. Secondly, thank you everyone involved in this wonderful session. My question is, in 2021, the EU imported more than 40% of its total gas consumption, 27% of oil imports, and 46% of coal imports from Russia. Energy represented 62% of EU total imports from Russia and cost of 99 billion euros. Although it's already decreased, according to the data of the Center of Research on Energy and Clean Air, Germany is still exporting 12 billion euros. Meanwhile, Italy and Netherlands still exporting 7.9 and 7.8 euros of fossil fuels, respectively. Other Western countries that still exporting are France, Poland, Bulgaria, Belgium, Greece, Spain, Australia, Romania, even the UK, in range of 1 to 4 billion euros since the war began. As we know, Russian economic system has shifted to gold standard, or the so-called ruble-backed by gold system. In other words, the Western countries are financing this ferocious Russian invasion. What's Ukraine's perspective on this issue and how to sort out this dilemma? Thank you.
Thank you very much for the question. We are going to the next question.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Dobrohuranku. Thank you so much, His Excellency, Mr. Ambassador, for the explanation. Let me introduce myself. My name is Akmal Maulana AR, and I'm from Department of International Relations. So before I jump to my question, I would like to quote the statement from our foreign minister in G20. The voices of all countries, big and small, south and north, developing and progressing, must be heard, which means all of the voices of all the nations are matters. So, Ambassador, my question is, what efforts are being made in this case by the Ukraine government to recover in the field of education, especially when it comes to school and university? As we all know, the education sector is also suffering as a result of this difficult situation. So actually, what the effort by the Ukraine government to recover the education sector? Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much for the question. Please give a round of applause to the audience. His Excellency, if you don't mind, you can directly answer the question.
Maybe battery is low. Thank you very much for the questions. Very nice questions, and indeed not very easy to answer, but I will try. First of all, I ask everyone, just address everyone in this hall, and everyone who can listen, who can hear me. For diplomacy, and especially for law, for international law, definitions are very important. And it's very important not to use definitions imposed by the country aggressor. So I would rather not, definitely, I would not going to analyze all the definitions why we cannot use them. But Crimea crisis, it's not correct. Then special military operation is something that was declared by dictator Putin, but is something that is not happening in Ukraine. Myself, even I don't prefer the definition war in Ukraine. War in Ukraine, what is it, war in Ukraine? I mean, this is direct aggression by Russian Federation. And you can be neutral, and you still can mention the aggressor. It's nothing to do with being neutral or not neutral, nothing to do of being member of non-aligned movement or not. You name the aggressor. It's human. It's not about neutrality or being non-aligned, right? So please try to call the things, the names, the real names. Aggression, the aggression. Colonialism, colonialism. Genocide, genocide. If we hide behind the definitions like military operation, conflict in Ukraine, conflict in somewhere else. No, it doesn't work. It doesn't work this way because we should be true and frank between ourselves, before ourselves at least, at the first, right? And then we should be, if we don't tell the truth, who will? The first question is about the neutrality about the food crisis, about the visit of Pak Jokowi to Ukraine with a peaceful mission, building bridges, G20, etc. And now, what I think about this is I think, well, as I understand, the question was about the visit and the peace mission, the mission of Pak Jokowi Dodo to Ukraine, what it can bring to the world, what can it be, what will be the result, what do we expect after this visit. Now, first, just statistics. Until now, we're talking about the non-aligned movement, we're talking about the neutrality, right? Until now, I didn't read in any source the words of condemnation of terrorist acts against civilians, against children, committed by Russian Federation in any official media of Indonesia. No official statements regarded the condemnation of the war crimes. Okay, I'm not talking about the invasion as it is. It might be disputable in eyes of some politicians worldwide, it is. But if we see the missile attack on the school, on maternity house, on kindergarten, and we see the children just killed, smashed in hundreds, I would expect from all the countries of the goodwill, I would expect from the humankind some words of condemnation of the war crimes, cruel war crimes against humanity. That's one. It's about the definitions, conflicts, and the attitude, and being neutral. What is being neutral? Till now I don't understand what it is. I know what is being human. I know what it is. I don't know what is being neutral, right? So this is just in general about the neutrality and humanity. What about the visit? The visit was absolutely historical, and I think it was an absolutely fantastic breakthrough in the process of the attitude from the world community towards the Russian aggression. It was historical in many understandings, and what Pak Jokowi did, I think that not many world leaders are, not many Asian leaders, African leaders, and North American leaders, South American leaders are capable of doing, because he was the first Asian leader to visit Ukraine since the beginning of the war, and the first Asian leader, and actually the first world leader who made this attempt to build up a bridge between Ukraine and Russia, which I myself, it's not my belief or hope, it's my knowledge that Russians are not capable of negotiations. They're not capable of persuasions. They're not capable of human discussion after what they did in Ukraine and after how they respond to Pak Jokowi's visit. I'm absolutely sure they're not capable of peace talks and peace negotiations. But it's very important for the world that the leader of G20, presiding in G20, and leader of the country with the biggest Muslim population in the world, and one of the biggest countries in general in the world, visits Russia after Ukraine, looks at this man opposite him, listens what he's mumbling about the special military operation and about the Russian interests and concerns, and my hope was that the understanding will come to the government of Indonesia. What is Russia? What is it capable of? And what will be the future of Russian Federation? Pak Jokowi, Ibu Retno, whose admirer I am, are much wiser and much more experienced than me, and actually much more experienced and wise than many people in this world, the majority of the people in this world. So I think that the decision they will take will be right, correct, and absolutely pro-human, pro-Indonesian, and pro-global. I don't like pro something, but still, it should be pro-Indonesian, defending the interests of your nation, defending the interests of humankind, and the global interests like security, food security, etc. After this visit, what is important? We are still waiting for the next move, because it's important to make the first step. The first step actually sometimes is the most important, because some people not brave enough, some people not decisive enough, some people are hesitating, etc. But the first step is half of the success, but very important, which will be the second, third, and fourth steps. I mean, whether there is a plan, because it's not possible to accomplish any task without a plan. Very concrete plan, not just say, because everyone can say that we want peace, we want to stop the war. Not enough. We have to have a plan. What we do if not? What we do if he refuses to talk? What we do if he refuses to stop? Yes? And I think the destiny of this peace process to the certain great extent in the hands of Pak Jokowi, because presiding in G20. And G20 now at present is a part of the NATO, I think, maybe, not NATO, a part of the European Union maybe, and maybe NATO coalition, yes, is the most influential body in the world to decide for the destiny of the humankind. Because United Nations is a paralyzed body. It's half dead after what we see, that even not capable of sending the peaceful mission, like blue helmets to Ukraine. For 8 years, United Nations is paralyzed. And the reason is very obvious. Why they could not send peacekeepers to Ukraine? Because the veto of Russian Federation, the right of veto, which just blockades every attempt of United Nations to do something, at least, right? So G20 is the body that can decide and that can make very efficient moves and use very efficient political and economic and financial instruments to make the dictator stop the war. So maybe this is the answer for the first question. And it's very important again. We talk about different, you see, G20 meeting, a ministerial meeting in Bali, very recent. What is the most important thing happened there? I would not talk about unanimity, but the majority of the participants agreed that we should not distract our attention to the minor points, because we resolve one issue, the issue of war in Ukraine, the issue of Russian aggression against Ukraine, and then we automatically resolve all the other issues, all the crises, all the threats, all the blockades, everything, all in one. One click, you stop the war, you resolve everything. If we try to resolve one by one, it will not be resolved, because the background and overall environment is not appropriate to release food, to release the fuel prices, etc. But the world community is moving towards this. So, last point. There can be no bridges between Russia and Ukraine anymore in terms of peace talks and peace solutions to this war. And I really hope that not only Indonesian leadership, government and experts understand this, but the whole world understands this. There are only two ways to end the war. They get out of our territory, of all the occupied territories, just withdraw all the troops, or they will be killed, all of them on my territory, like it happened one day in nearly all the countries in the world, like in Indonesia too. Very simple. No other ways. There is no third way. No. After what they did. It was possible in March, yes. Not now. And the statistics you saw on the screen, it's just the statistics of the United Nations, confirmed 100%. Now we have hundreds of thousands of people killed or badly wounded. Hundreds of thousands, not thousands, hundreds of thousands. And millions of people displaced. And you know, like, I don't know how many infrastructure destroyed. So what can we talk about? Leave or die, no other way. About the second question, oil and gas west. Yeah, I don't remember all the figures you provided us with, but yes, it is a big problem for the world that not all the countries can just stop importing the Russian oil and gas. This does not only include Western countries, it's also applicable to the East, like China and India. They are increased the imports of Russian oil and gas. Okay, this is true, and well, it's not up to me to decide what to do now, but I hope after the recent visits, I will not mention them, the high visits of certain influential countries to the certain influential countries in Asia, in the Middle East, that after this the price for oil will be decreasing, the price for oil and gas will be going down, and this will make the income of Russian Federation smaller, and this will make additional pressure upon Russia. But still, I repeat, we can take many measures, but the main measure, which is the most efficient, is the good modern weapons that can help Ukraine to kick off all the invaders from our land. All those murderers, rapists, and just invaders. This first one and second one is, of course, the sanctions. Any sanctions, any restrictions, because yes, you were absolutely right. Every dollar comes to Russian economy is used to finance the war. So no compromise, I think. Third question is about the recovery. Yes, our Prime Minister recently presented in Geneva, I think we presented the recovery plan for after-war, post-war rebuilding program, big program. He presented many projects and all that. But you see, this is important to think about it now. But I think the most important is to think how to end the war, because if we don't end the war, those plans will be like in some future which we'll never achieve. So the most important thing now is to stop the war.
Thank you very much, His Excellency. So, is there any other question? Maybe to okay, the one with black hijab in the right side, and then the one with brown hijab. Please deliver the question shortly.
Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you for the opportunity. Let me introduce myself. My name is Utami Amalia Sudarman. I'm from International Relations 2021. This session, I want to question about what is the right step for young people right now to be able to contribute to building the privilege, the exit in politics right now, politics global right now or today. So, thank you, Mr. Ambassador.
I didn't get it. Can you get it slower, please?
I think she is asking about what is kind of contribution that we could give to maintain something, a response to the current situation,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now we are going to the next question.
Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Nazil Al-Fayed. Sorry, in advance, permission to ask. But maybe this is a presumptuous question, but I want to know the Ukraine perspective on this war. Has Ukraine ever thought that actually this war is Western and Eastern hegemony, and Ukraine is just a sacrifice for Russia and a Western country known as a superpower country that is US. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the question. The next one.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Dr. Vasyl Hamianin, for the insight. This topic for me is interesting as it is low-key related to my undergraduate thesis. So allow me to ask some questions.
One question, please.
Oh, okay. A war is always a human tragedy, and the war in Ukraine is no exception. How would the current war between Russia and Ukraine foster a bipolar system within global politics? Thank you.
Foster the bipolar system in global politics. Bipolar system.
Oh, bipolar, sorry, I'm sorry.
It's okay, His Excellency. If you don't mind, you can directly answer the question.
Yeah, please. Okay. Yeah, I have this. Thank you. Okay. Thank you for the questions. First question, I will be very, very brief because we don't have much time, so I want many people ask questions. How can you contribute into the peaceful resolution of the war? Oh, well, I don't like these words. Oh my God! How can we contribute to end the war? Right? Actually, from you, from all of you, and actually from all the humankind, I would expect a few things. Actually, first is your prayers. It's very important for our brothers and sisters, and for Muslim brothers and sisters in Ukraine. They can feel it. Second, I would expect any humanitarian support you can do, anything, any foundations, any humanitarian aids, any actions, I don't know, whatever you can do, any word would be important, anything. If you, for example, share the, make more likes and share the postings by Ukrainian embassy and myself in Instagram, Twitter and Facebook, this will be a contribution too. So whatever you can do, do it. Very important is to, at present, the whole world is fighting Russian propaganda. It's very important for every one of you, as the wise, clever people, as the future of this country, to be able to think, to analyze, and to oppose the propaganda. Because propaganda is a war. Propaganda is murders. Propaganda is war crimes. If you make a little contribution to oppose the propaganda, it will be, it will be a great, great contribution into the, not into the victory of Ukraine over Russia, but into the what is right, into the world, this world becoming better. So maybe this. Second, I always expect this question about the Ukraine being a battlefield of West and the East, Russia and the NATO. I think I tried to explain something about the NATO and Russia, and you know what? The times changed dramatically, and it's not, I repeat, it's not the Soviet Union, the big empire, and the NATO, the collective West, whatever you call them. It's not, it's different. And as if you trace the history of last 30 years, West did all it can to support Russia, to get friendly with Russia, not to provoke Russia, not to provoke Putin, to be maximum, like, you know what? When the worst, I mean, since 2014, Crimea is occupied. Millions of people fled from Crimea and from Donbass. Donbass is partially destroyed, partially occupied. A lot of people killed. Even after this, Western countries, NATO, did not want to start this battlefield with Russia. Not because NATO is afraid of Russia, not because NATO is concerned about anything. No, because the world does not want the war. And they try to do anything possible to avoid the conflict, the war, the attacks, the invasion, which is the Western countries were desperately trying to do this. Even despite the fact that Russia did terrible things in Georgia, in Chechnya, in Ukraine, etc. But they were trying to avoid this to the final point. And they did anything possible not to provoke Russian Federation to attack Ukraine. I mean, if they provided Ukraine with missiles, with like Harpoon, with Patriot missiles before the 24th of February, this war will end 2 months ago maybe. No, they didn't do anything. They did not close the sky. They did not provide us with still with aviation that can protect the skies, etc. Nothing. Meaning what? It's not a battlefield of between the NATO and Russia. You see, Russia is not even capable of defeating Ukraine, which is small at times and times, which was not prepared, which did not have such an amount of ammunition. Russia cannot defeat Ukraine. Just think about it. What the confrontation between West and Russia can we talk about? If NATO is in war, I will give Russia no more than 5 days. So these narratives are being promoted by Russian propaganda too, to say it, okay, you know, it's a great shame for Russian army and for Russian politics to start the war and then to be defeated in this war. That's why they start to think about something, how can we distract the attention of the world? Oh, it's not the war of Russia and Ukraine, it's war of Russia and the West. Russia is not capable of producing toilet paper, my friends. Russia is not capable of producing just normal white paper, cars, anything, washing machines, nothing without the 10 to 80% of Western components. How can Russia defeat the West? So those talks about the no. And I'm not going to talk about nuclear weapons because it's a myth, again, another myth of Russian propaganda, which is not reliable. Well, I know what's happening inside this system. Country that is not capable of producing tanks, aircrafts, missiles, ammunition without the components imported from the Europe and the United States, how can it be like so dangerous and be capable of producing like high-tech nuclear like weapons or systems? We're not talking here about the collective West. We're talking about mad dog Russia, which attacked the country, which not even there was not even hint of endangering or threatening Russia. How can, I mean, okay, let's put it directly. How can Indonesia be concerned about the threat from Singapore, for example? Would you find it funny? I think yes. That's how Russia can be threatened by Ukraine. Oh my God. You just think about it and it will be clear, crystal clear. What about the bipolar world? Yeah, sir?
Bipolarity power in the global world.
You see, I don't really care about the bipolarity of monopolarity or multipolarity of this world. I would prefer this world to be multipolar. Multipolar. So it will be like the model of the United Nations, right? But more transformed and more improved. I personally would love to see the world like this, like the United Nations, but with cardinal reform of the Security Council, without these ridiculous vetoes and all this Russia sitting there without any right. By the way, this is a question to the international law. Russia has no right to be in the Security Council for the first thing. It has no right. No documents confirming that Russia has a place there, no votes, nothing. So, need to be reformed. This is ideal model of the world, with a rotating presidency like in G20, like a rotating presidency. It can be like, the world community should be involved in this process entirely, not only just 5 countries there who were the so-called winners of the Second World War against Hitler. The G20, I think, makes more or less feasible model for the future multipolarity. What about bipolarity? I don't see any bipolarity here. It's again the thing created by propaganda, not only by Russian propaganda, but I think that's something comes also from China. That well, how can the United States be the strongest country in the world? Where the world will be unbalanced, the world will be like endangered. I don't see any danger from democratic world being the stronger than Russia. Well, because I see the danger from Russia here. The country that threatens all countries that surround her is Russia. It's not the United Kingdom or Germany or Poland. Come on. So, okay, it's my opinion again. Monopolar world is not a good thing to have. Bipolar world, it's always a confrontation or a potential confrontation. Because someone from these two will be trying to be better, bigger and stronger. And this will be the way to nowhere. So if you ask me my model, I described it already. It's multipolarity, it's cooperation between all humankind in format of improved and reformed United Nations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, His Excellency. Let's give a round of applause for His Excellency. Ladies and gentlemen, that was a fruitful discussion to have with the Ambassador of Ukraine to Indonesia. I'm so sorry we don't have more time. Okay. So thank you very much, His Excellency. If you don't mind, Mr. Hangga Fatana is waiting for you for the next agenda.
So I just say a couple of words?
Yes, you can give a closing statement.
Yeah, very, very brief. I'm proud to be here. I'm proud to be among the students, among the professors, among the clever people who are the present and the future of this country. It's really, I was a student myself, I was the researcher myself, I did this PhD and all this stuff, and I remember this is very strange feeling you have that, you know, you did something and then in fact you didn't do anything like real, didn't do anything tangible, but after all I understood that your thoughts, your prayers can materialize in something very important, in something crucial that will decide the destiny of your country. So to serve your country proudly and efficiently, be clever, be wise, dig deeper, think wider. Don't be monopolar. Think, because the world is like a rainbow. It has many colors, not just black and white. I thank you so much. It was my pleasure and my honor to be here.
Thank you very much, His Excellency. Thank you very much. Mr. Hangga Fatana is waiting for you. Ladies and gentlemen, finally we are reaching the end of our session today. Thank you for coming to the event. I hope there are plenty of things we could learn about Ukraine in global politics. Ladies and gentlemen, last but not least, we are also wishing you a shower of joys and blessing from Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. On behalf of Universitas Islam Indonesia, I am Masitoh Nurrohma signing off from Yogyakarta. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Recording stopped.